Something that Mark said back at the beginning of the year when Aaron was in Israel really struck me, and I thought it deserved to be looked at again. He said that second, third, and fourth generation Christians often lose the horror of their sin and the glory of their salvation. I was disappointed to find out that that wasn't an original thought by Mark, because it was not only very astute in its observation, but it was pretty convicting to me, being a third generation Christian. And the more I thought about it, I thought, what is horror? Well, I know that when I think of the word horror, I think of like horror movies. And what happens in horror movies? Well, people are scared, and then tends to be a lot of blood and gore. And that's one of the things that turns some people off to horror movies. But I think that's really a pretty close description of what really sin looks like. When I was in high school, I was in the ag program, and I remember starting as a freshman, being the oldest child. Everything is brand new, and I'm the trailblazer, so I start, and the first couple of weeks I'm in the ag program, I get a pig, and the next month we take it to the fair and sell it, and then the following week when we get back, the teacher takes us out onto the farm, and we watch the animals get butchered. Now, growing up where I lived, I'm not a hunter. I'd never seen anything like that. That was horrific. It kind of was interesting to talk to the seniors. They said, hey, every freshman class has at least one kid that gets sick. Yeah, no, that happened in our class. It wasn't me, but it happened in our class. It happens because it's hard to watch. Now, over the 4 years that I was in that program, it got easier to watch those animals get butchered, and we watched it every time. But it never got easy. I watched cows, or steers, and pigs get butchered, and I watched a lamb get butchered one time. I would never watch a lamb get butchered again. I could watch the steers and pigs without an issue because it was quick. And then when I thought about it, I thought it was kind of ironic the way they butchered the lambs was not quick and painless, and I didn't like watching that. It was horrific because a lot of the times when he would come out, it was hot like it's been the last few days, and you can smell death. You really can. It smells a lot like blood. And it not only just hangs heavy in the air, I mean, you can almost feel it. And it's hard. It is hard to see that. You don't appreciate. I mean, you really want to know how awful and yucky and disgusting and nasty your sin is before God? Go out on a hot day when the butcher's out. It's not pleasant. It's hard. Not growing up a hunter, I never had that kind of experience. I didn't know animals had that much blood in them. And it was difficult. I got to the point where I could watch it without having too much of a problem, but the beginning was always the worst. I find it interesting that was kind of the prescription that God had given the Israelites to atone, not to erase, but to atone for their sin. Take one of these animals and put it to death. In, I believe, most cases, they were required to have their hand on the animal while the priest killed it. I didn't ever have my hand on any of the animals that I saw butchered. I did have my hand on an animal one time that I had to dispatch when I went hunting for the first time, and I didn't like it. Doesn't mean I'm not going to do it again, because it is part of life, but it's something to be respected. However, that sacrifice that the Israelites were ordered to make, it didn't take away their sin. It just kind of put it off for a little while. It didn't answer the issue. So a different kind of lamb had to come, because it is not possible that the blood of bulls and goats could take away sin. Therefore, he came into the world. He said, sacrifice and offering you did not desire, but a body you have prepared for me, and burnt offerings and sacrifices for sin you had no pleasure. And I said, behold, I have come. In the volume of the book it is written of me to do your will, O God. I watched a lot of animals get butchered over my 4 years there. And as I said, it got easier, but it never got easy. And one of the hardest things about it was knowing that life had been taken. In some cases, it was my animal. In some cases, it was other kids that they would have emotional breakdowns because they weren't able to separate that. This is my project, not my pet. We have made for us a sacrifice that we didn't have to make. We didn't have to put our hands on that sacrifice and have that part of that sacrifice. We get to have a meal. We get to sit down with one another and share in this. And that's what we get to do instead of having to be the butcher, instead of having to watch it. This is how we get to share in this. As we eat and as we drink, consider just how horrible and awful and disgusting our sin is, and just how glorious it is that this is the way that we get to celebrate and to share in that sacrifice.